So, my name's Darius. Thank you very much for joining this unusual little workshop. I know you're all really busy, and one of the things we do at Mind Map Studio is try and fit in with busy lives, and that's one of the reasons why we're doing this online workshop. And this is the first time we've done it in the UK like this, because a lot of people in the UK can't come to our talks and so on. So here's what I'm going to do. Guys, this talk is directed to you as young ones, okay? I want to speak to you as people who are either just going into high school, in high school, or at university, okay? I want to speak to you about dyslexia and mind mapping. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to you about why mind mapping could really help you, okay? So once dyslexics know why, often they're interested in how. Okay, so I'm going to tell you why, then I'm going to tell you how to mind map a little bit, get your head around it. I've got my iPad Pro here. I'm going to play around on the screen a little bit. I'm going to show you some videos, that sort of thing, okay? And then we're going to talk about when maybe you could learn how to mind map, etc. So here we go. First thing is, I want to introduce myself. I'm dyslexic. I've obviously always been dyslexic. I found out when I was 35, but I knew there was problems all the way through my life. But I did manage to do a law degree. I have run businesses. I've been a primary school teacher, and now recently we brought a couple of teenagers through high school, and both of them had dyslexia. One very strong dyslexia, one mild dyslexia. And that experience prompted my wife and I, Jo, who's here, and she'll introduce herself, to start a company called Mind Map Studio to help you as parents and to help you as children get the most out of life and learn the skills in high school rather than after you've left school. I want to show you a video about that soon, and Alicia's going to play these videos. But before we play the video, I just want to go around the circle, introduce ourselves. I'll start off with Jo. Jo, could you introduce yourself?
Okay, hi everybody, I'm Jo. I'm the other half of Mind Map Studio. I'm more the behind the scenes, sort of, that's my role, keeping everything on track. I'm not dyslexic, so I have a very different way of seeing things, having raised children who are dyslexic. So I'm here if you've got specific questions about Mind Map Studio and our courses, or if you've got questions about parenting and how we've done it. And so I'm here to get to know you all as well.
Thank you. Emma, how about you? So you're in Edinburgh?
Yes.
And your son's name?
Ethan.
Hi, Ethan. And what year are you in, Ethan?
I'm in
S4.
Yeah.
Oh, hi, my name is Mitka. I am a teacher at high school. I'm hearing a lot about children with dyslexia, and I am very curious. I want to learn a lot. So that's why I'm here. I just found out about this course on Facebook, and I just joined, and that's all.
I've just recently been diagnosed with dyslexia, and this is my mum. That's my sister.
Okay, what's your
I'm
name?
Debbie. I'm mum to Molly, who's 17, and Molly has just recently been diagnosed with dyslexia. So she's going into year 13, doing her A-levels at the moment.
Okay. I've got a great video for you. There's a 16, 17-year-old doing A-levels, and she tells her story of mind mapping, okay? So I'll show you that as well, okay?
My name is Ahmed, and this is my daughter called Yasmin.
So let's get stuck in, okay? So I've introduced you as I'm a parent, I'm dyslexic, I'm a parent of a dyslexic, and I help hundreds of people learn how to mind map and help them with their dyslexia. And I also tutor online in groups dyslexics how to mind map. So First things first, guys, you've probably seen things like mind maps, and they've been called spider diagrams or bubble maps. I'm not talking about spider diagrams here, and I'm not talking about bubble maps. They don't work for me, and I don't think they really work that well as a study technique. They're okay. But I went through law school with a real mind map, and I kind of know what mind map actually is needed to take the weight of a whole course into one mind map to go into an exam or a test or an essay. And I really want you to get that out of your mind, that you think mind mapping is just spider diagrams and bubble diagrams, okay? Mind mapping is way more than that. Here's a quick video from one of the parents who went through the courses that we do and the effect it had on them. And I'm hoping this might help some of you young ones think, oh, this might actually be quite good.
It's unlocked a door in Yasmin's memory and revision techniques that we just never thought that we would be able to go through. I was kind of, terrified about how we would get through prelims and how Yasmin would cope with them. And I think that just given her a great tool to manage not just the revision but also the anxiety of it, because she feels now that she has something that she can make work, which before we just didn't have. I mean, Darius, I think as a parent, I feel quite emotional about this. You've sort of taken us out of a hole and sort of put us on a pedestal, really, which we didn't have before. So thank you for that.
That's one child, one parent whose lives turned around just because they learned a straightforward way of taking notes that helped them organize their thoughts. Now, let's look at what a day in the life of a dyslexic teenager can look like in high school. I'm going to show you a video that I call Dear John. And you might see some of these little traits. And if you watch this video, you'll see lots of little things that are to do with dyslexia, and you might notice, oh, I do that. It's 4.5 minutes long. I want to tell you a story about John, a 13-year-old who's dyslexic. He's smart, and this is a typical day for John. He sleeps through his alarm. His mum has to get him up out of bed. He's feeling a little bit tired and often quite emotional in the morning when he wakes up. His room's more of a mess than a typical teenager. Rushes out the door to catch the bus just in time. Everything's just in time with John. And his bag is huge and heavy because he can't remember what to take on what days, so he just takes everything. He gets to school just in time, and it's English. He likes the discussions in English, but he has to copy the board, and it takes him forever to copy the board. He doesn't finish it in time, and his teacher says he has to come back at lunch to finish it off. It's his hardest subject, and he hopes he gets a C. He really needs it. Physics, he loves it. The puzzles, the formulas are a little bit hard to remember, and his teacher tells him to take notes from the textbook, and he does, but he finds that he's just writing everything out all over again and doesn't know what to leave out and what to keep in. Daydreams a bit, thinking about the meaning of life and the substance of gravity and things like that. PE comes along and he's forgotten another piece of kit. His teacher's hard on him for that one. Lunchtime, his friends all go off to the shops, and John has to go to the English class to finish and study a little bit for his history test after lunch. He tries to text his friends to keep up with them, but texting takes forever for him to figure out the right kind of text to send. It's the history test. He does really well in history. He likes the stories, he likes talking about them, but when it comes to the essays, it's a problem. He's hoping he'll remember some of the names and the dates, but he doesn't manage to finish on time, and his teacher says he can come back at lunchtime to finish it off, or he'll just mark it as it is. And John says, I don't think I've got another lunchtime. You'll just have to mark it as it is. Geography. He has to brainstorm his ideas. He gets lots of great ideas in geography, but he can't always find how they all fit together. Art. He loves it. It's the one oasis in the whole school day. He loves drawing, he loves creating, and his teacher seems to understand him. And after school, he loves going to his football club with his friends and they play football. He's really good at it. He can seem to adapt and score more goals than the others, and this is one of the few places people say well done to him. Heads home because his mum knows he's got to sit down and do his homework. He's got his essay to do. He really tries to do the outline like his teacher says. 45 minutes into it, he decides just to write out his thoughts into an essay straight from his head and hope that works. It's dinner time and he's talking with his family. He's a great conversationalist. He loves it. Sometimes they make fun of the words he makes up or mispronounces. And at the end of dinner, he has to ask his parents again to help him with his English homework to get the essay in on time. His mum, Penny, helps him reorganize the essay so it makes more sense. And he has to rewrite the essay that evening. 9:30 he finishes it and he's super tired, exhausted emotionally and physically. He wants to unwind. He burns the candle at both ends, watching Netflix and playing games. And the next morning he's got to do it all over again. And he's getting a little bit more stressed every single day because he feels like he's slipping behind everyone else. I told you that story because John is me as a child. There's also me as a parent of a dyslexic child. And it was only when I was 21 that I discovered how to mind map as a way to overcome the fear of exams. And it changed the way I learned. And if there was one bit of advice I would give my younger self and me as a parent is to encourage my child to learn at 13 and encourage myself to learn at 13 rather than 21. And my hope for John is that he learns how to study. He uses mind mapping as a way to help him organize his thoughts, to take the notes from the board down in time, to map out his textbook and outline his essays in a systematic way and remember the facts he needs for his test. And I didn't mention reading and writing once. That was all about how dyslexia affects the way you organize your lives and high school. Now, it's not all bad with dyslexia. In fact, dyslexia is, scientists are finding that actually the reality is dyslexic has tons of advantages. This is a great book, The Dyslexic Advantage, okay? And once you get out of high school, you see those advantages a lot more. Joe, could you share a little bit about what it looks like from your perspective as a mum, looking at your children and a message to other dyslexic children out there about the disadvantages and advantages?
Yeah, I think one thing that I would love to say to all of you teenagers sitting there is we're really determined at Mind Map Studio that we see dyslexia as a bit of a superpower and a massive advantage. And it's really difficult when you're in a school system that wants to teach you just one certain way. And it wants to teach you in a very linear way, in a very organized way that's all about remembering facts and regurgitating facts. And that's not the natural way for a dyslexic brain to work. I've watched my daughters, they're both incredibly creative, but they've really struggled in a system that's not designed for them. But that doesn't mean that there's something wrong with them. It means that there's something wrong with the system, that it can't equip them to learn well. And so what our heart really at Mind Map Studio is we want to equip you with mind mapping, with tutoring, so that you can then thrive in the environment you find yourself with. Find a way that works for how you're wired, because you have incredible creativity and innovative ways of looking at the world that I'm a really linear thinker. I just don't have, and other linear thinkers don't have. We see things very systematically, and we often can't think outside the box to see the creative solution. So we want to encourage you guys to find what works for you and how your mind works, because what's in your mind really needs to get out into the world, because we need how you see things. You have the answers to problems that other people are not going to be able to answer. So I wanted to encourage you because I know from watching our daughters that school can sometimes be a bit of a discouraging place. But I just wanted to say, you know, you've got amazing potential and amazing things to offer. So yeah, be encouraged and find what works for you.
Thanks, Joe. I could spend a lot of time explaining to you why your brain works differently than others and why it's specialized to do some things really amazingly well and other things not so well, like reading and writing not so well, but other things amazingly well. But I'm not going to go into all the details. I'm going to give you a little story that can help you understand the way your brain works. Now, when I share this is my way of explaining dyslexia. And when I share this with you, I hope maybe you can understand a little bit of what's going on inside your brain and why. Let me share with you how this dyslexic brain works to other people. I call my brain a zero gravity space. And let me explain what I mean by that. Imagine this is my brain. It's a workshop and I've got my table. And then teacher comes along, gives me this robotic hoover, tells me all about it. I take it into my workshop. What's the first thing that I do as a dyslexic? I take it apart, pull it to pieces in my imagination and try and figure out how it works. But then I turn away and my attention goes on to something else. And then I come back. Is it there? No. Here I've got 3 big parts, but the other smaller parts have gone. And I'm kind of like, I'm sure I left them on that table. I'll tell you where it's gone. It's floated up into the top of the ceiling because my brain is like a zero gravity space. It's all floated away. Not completely away. I can pull it back down and reorganize it, but I have to do it every single time. This has pros and cons. This gravity has the advantage that when I put my attention onto something on the work table, I can actually make it float, 3-dimensionally understand it, and I'd be able to take ideas and fit them all together. Whereas other people, they have to have this kind of gravity workshop. They have to stick things in place and things fall over and it might be a bit awkward to figure it out and things like that. That's the upside. It's easy to figure it all out. The downside though is that when I take this wonderful robot and I say, I want to share it with you, Mum, or my teacher, or my boss, or my colleague, and I take it outside of the workshop, this is what happens. Thunk, 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 thunk. It all just starts to fall to bits as I start explaining it to them, and I don't understand why. And they're looking at this mess of pieces and they're kind of like, what are you going on about? And I don't understand it. Well, now I do understand it. It's gravity. And the answer to the problem of what to do about taking this wonderful prototype in my imagination and making it able to get out the door without falling to bits is duct tape. Here's my tape. I want to stick everything together. And so what I do in my imagination, I find a way to stick everything together, and I can go out the door with my tray, I've tacked it all together, and I explain it to someone. They're like, oh, I get that, well done, because it fits together and it sticks together. Now for me, the actual way that I stick my ideas together is with a mind map, because I don't need to do lots of writing. I can just take the key idea and all the branches and keywords, fit it together like a blueprint. And this is me with my blueprint on the wall. This is my quick release of thoughts. And I would encourage you as a parent to learn how to do this with your child. A lot of my students have found that this unlocks their abilities and releases them productively into the real world. Do you relate to that, guys? Have you got a zero gravity brain? Well, like, you know, different people have like different degrees of gravity, as it were, using that analogy. Like my wife, Jo, she's got like solid gravity, like super gravity in her workshop. if she puts something there, it doesn't get moved. And if it does get moved, she's like, what happened to that piece? I knew it'd be exactly there. But for me, I'm so used to things floating away, I come back and I go, oh yeah, I think there was something there. And so I have to make a special effort to stick everything together and stick it down so that it's there when I come back. And that for me is what a mind map is. Now, it might not be mind mapping for you, but I would counsel you to take notes. Learn how to take notes. Even if it's on your phone or a quick scribble of something or a picture or a doodle or something like that, take notes, okay? And I would suggest right now that if you've got a paper and pen, and I can see Evie's there with Debbie with paper and pen, I would suggest, why don't you get a bit of paper and pen just now and just doodle? I mean, write a word, draw, do a pattern, do something, because there's something about when you start doodling and drawing that it locks the memories in place, okay? And it allows a dyslexic to think a little bit more, okay? So I highly recommend getting a pen and paper and just doodling away. There's no right and wrong for this. You might even draw some of my maps as they come along, and you can practice with that a little bit. Now, I want to show you a little trick. Watch this. Headphones. Can you see my headphones there? Okay? These are regular headphones. And I got so fed up with them being tangled, I decided to find a way to quick release them. And the reason I wanted to show you this is often dyslexia is like tangled thoughts. You got tons of tangled thoughts. And a teacher or a boss or a co-worker comes along and goes, Darius, what was those ideas you had about this, that, and the next thing? And you're like, oh, hold on a minute. Yeah, there was this, oh, and there was that, and oh, there was this, oh, and there was that, and you get all confused and it takes forever, okay? What if you could take those thoughts and arrange them in such a way that you take those thoughts, you wrap them up into something like a mind map, nice and simply, they're ordered and organized with a little trick, and this is the little trick. You take a loop, okay, this is the bit that I kind of invented for this trick. You put the loop through, okay, and then you can just have those in your pocket, and whenever you want them, what you do is you pull the tag and it unwinds. That's the same as a mind map. When someone says to me, oh Darius, what's that talk you're giving? I would go to my mind map and I'd go, oh yeah, I'm going to welcome them, talk about misconceptions, the problems with dyslexia, I'm going to show them the Dear John, and then I'm going to talk about the advantages of dyslexia, show them the zero gravity, and then talk about the headphone as a metaphor and how notes are the same as headphones. And then I'm going to show them how to mind map. Do you want to know how to do these headphones? Well, you have to watch another video later on. I hope I have tried to communicate a little bit of why mind mapping is so incredibly powerful for a dyslexic who's got tons of great thoughts and how to express them in life. Has that helped a little bit? I hope you're hungry for more, because I'm going to ask you a question. Why are you doing high school? Why are you doing university? Why are you doing life? Let's get really deep. Let me give you an answer, my answer, that I gave to my children. I said, look, high school's not so much about what you learn, but learning how to learn. Learning the skills you'll need in later life to be able to deliver on a project on time, to set a goal, to put aside distractions, to learn the skills, a way of working that matches your way of thinking. So when you do find your passion, when you're 25, 35, 45, you've got those skills to express what's in your mind. You can learn the skills now. So, Molly, did you have a question?
No, I was just saying that my school motto is learning to live, living to learn, and just reminded me of that.
Ah, right. Learning to live and live to learn. Yeah. Well, do you know what? Us dyslexics, we love learning. But, you know, when you learn to love learning, you need to find a way to express what you're learning. I could talk to you about this for ages, and I'm not. I'm going to control myself and just stop it there. And we're going to go on to how to mind map. Okay? I'm going to share with you a 2-minute video. This is the very basics. Let's talk about how to mind map. Here are the top 5 basics of mind mapping. The visual way of doing mind maps is different from the written way. On a horizontal page, we create a map of the information compared to linear notes and lists of notes and bullet points, etc., which can take up 4 times as much room. Central image can also be a shape and is the main topic or phrase to focus in on. The curving branches go under the words. Clockwise is another feature of mind mapping. Then there's the level of importance. The branches are ordered in level of importance. Concepts go towards the center and details towards the edge. We use thick branches for the center and thin branches for the edge, like a tree. Now, key words are there to unpack sentences. How many words do you put on a branch? Well, 1 is what you do most of the time. 2 occasionally. For example, a pair of words like Mind Map Studio fits as kind of 1 meaning. What about more? Like a quote? Well, sparingly. You can put it towards the edge of the map and write down the quote like it's a poster if you want the exact phraseology, but try not to get caught up in that because that can make a very messy map. Write in capitals, not cursive. Visually, we use color and color each branch the same, and we use images for landmark ideas and facts. It's important to know that there are 3 types of mind map: a spider map, a mind map, and a memory map for different uses. A spider map is rough, sketchy. A mind map uses all 5 principles, but a memory map is neat, structured, and this is for a real result. There you have it, all the 5 basics of mind mapping. With those 5 basics, you can do a heck of a lot. I can do a whole law degree. I can do a medical degree with just those 5 basics. And I could show you the maths about how it could save you at least half, if not more, of the time it takes to revise for a whole university course or high school. And so, but I do that in my courses. I show people the maths of it, how much time it will save you in reading, rereading your notes, writing out notes, rewriting out notes, writing essays and essay outlines. All of that sort of stuff gets cut because you go straight to the map, okay? And then once you've got it organized, you then turn it into an essay when it's ready to be exported. Joe's with us for another 10 minutes or so, and I want to just... Often there's lots of questions about all sorts of things, and I just want you to have this opportunity. We don't always get this opportunity with Joe, to ask her questions for, as a parent, what it's like being non-dyslexic with a dyslexic child. So we're just going to talk about dyslexia for a bit, and then we'll talk question answers about mind mapping.
So the way that we teach mind mapping, because obviously tonight can only really be an overview of, like Darius has said, why mind mapping helps, because it's more in line with how a dyslexic mind works. But we can't really teach the entirety of mind mapping just in a 1-hour session. And so what we've done is we've put together specific courses that teach mind mapping in much more depth and give you the opportunity to really become quite competent at it. And we learned how to do this because our daughter really crashed and burned when she came up to her exams. She was doing really well, and then she went from being an A grade student to her teachers starting to think she wasn't putting the work in or the effort in, whereas the reality was she was putting just as much work in but not keeping up. But she was reluctant to learn mind mapping from her dad. You get that tension, parent, teenager thing. And so what we looked for was online video courses. You know, a little bit like there's Khan Academy that teaches maths. We looked for a mind map equivalent, couldn't find one. And so Darius started to make videos for our daughter so that she could learn, because what we realized was sometimes you can learn for ages and then other times your brain's full after 5 minutes, and it's called your working memory. And often for a dyslexic mind that can fill up really quickly. So our courses are structured deliberately that you would watch an hour of videos every week, and then there's an online tutorial very similar in format to this, where everybody reviews what they've learned through the week, and they get to learn from each other, share their work, give examples of what they've done from watching the videos, where they've been using mind maps, any struggles that they've had, and together as a group you kind of overcome them. Because what we realized was the videos were successful, but the real power is realizing that other people are learning at the same time. And so the courses that we offer split into a 4-week course, and it's very much focused on coursework. How would you mind map for exams, for presentations, for for essays, for presentations, for homework, for note taking. And that's a 4-week course. This one will be a 5-week course because there's an introductory night as well to just bring you up to speed more on why mind mapping and what the course is going to involve. And then we offer another course, which is a 6-week course, and it teaches you how to mind map for exams. And so that way you've carried all of the information into the exam, and then you answer the questions from that map rather than trying to hold everything in your head. So the link that's in the chat explains the courses in much more detail, and it shows you the price structure and what's involved in each course. And we just think this is the best possible way that we find so far that works for how dyslexic minds function. You've got the videos that you can either watch in a full hour or just watch a wee bit each day, or just however much you can cope with, and then come together and learn together in the tutorial setting. So I'm guessing if that's thrown up more questions, then you could ask them in the Q&A time from Darius.
Thank you, Joe. That's brilliant. How about you head off now, because I know you've got to go to another appointment.
Yeah, sorry, I had a double booking tonight, so I'm doing this for now and then I've got to go on to another meeting. So it was lovely to meet everybody, and
Thank you.
hopefully we'll see you again on our mind mapping journey together. So bye.
Bye, Joe.
Bye for now.
Okay, so Molly, I promised you a video about a teenager, a 16, 17-year-old who was doing A-levels. Now, in the Dear John video, I say the ideal time to learn how to mind map is about 12, 13, 14. So here's a video about Mia and how she used a mind map to actually do an exam. Okay? And it's in a study group. You'll see a study group in action. It's kind of like what we're doing now. Okay, so let's start. Mia, tell us your news.
Oh, I got a C in history. So, well, I'm one of the top of the class, to be honest. Somehow.
No way.
Yeah. So, yeah, I was really happy with that.
So, Mia, fill us in. Give us the full picture. Where were you before the mind map course?
It wasn't very good at all, was it? The teacher who was head of the course said that if you didn't pass the test, if you got a U, you'd get kicked off the course, which would mean I only had 2 A-levels and I made 3 for university. So, and then obviously it's got a lot better than that. And I'm really happy because it means as well, it means I don't have to go to as many extra lessons and everything. So, yeah, I'm really happy.
What
I
is
was
it you
really
want
happy.
to do, Mia?
Speech and language therapy.
So would you say you were on track to get a U when your teachers told you that? Or were they just trying to scare you?
No, I think I was. I didn't have a clue what was going on. I just didn't know anything. It was really hard, but sorted now.
That is absolutely brilliant. Where did you come in your class? Tell us more about that.
A lot of people have got D's and A's.
How much would you say mind mapping helped you in all of that then? Because I know you worked really hard for that.
Yeah, I mean, it was the revision I did was mind maps as well. It helped me to like put them in certain topics better as well. Well, like when I first started, I went from like 10 pages of notes to one mind map, didn't I? So that kind of thing was really helpful because it didn't seem like such a burden with all the pages, because it was just like a couple of mind maps instead of loads of pages. I planned my answer with a mind map.
Okay.
And then when I was in the exam, when I was remembering things, I remembered it as a mind map in a way. Like I remembered there was a branch for this and a branch for that. And
did you plan your essay in the exam with a mind map?
Yeah, when I was in the exam, when I got the question, I put the question in the middle and used the branches that I could remember from previous mind maps and put them on to that.
Well
so I knew
done.
what I was writing, otherwise I'd forget what I was going to write in my paragraphs.
Well done.
So,
well done.
Thank you.
I am so proud of you.
Thank you.
So that's a real story about how mind mapping helps someone. So, question and answer time. What kind of questions have you got about mind mapping? I know there's tons of questions. Just share whatever is right at the front of your mind just now. I'm just going to do something here that I call a bullet map while I answer these questions. Imagine this is my piece of paper.
How important is colour coding on a mind map?
To us, I think it's finding those keywords to put in the map, because we find it really difficult to eliminate the text. So if you've got any suggestions for those keywords.
Whether once the mind map's completed and you kind of, if there's that thing of, oh, I forgot to include an important part, or, you know, whether, you know, sometimes it has to be revisited and re-edited.
How do you store your mind maps in the subjects? Well, just sort of keeping all of your mind maps organised for the various subjects.
What about someone whose spelling isn't 100%, spelling isn't 100%? How about using symbols or even simple pictures in your mind map?
Well, they're working clockwise. How would you know where to start?
You're not doing this in a classroom, so you're just doing it as part of a, you know, working, whether it's planning homework or planning an activity. How long do you spend, you know, constructing? How long do you spend mind mapping?
I've just got one question for Beth and Isabel. Have you had any difficulty with like auditory processing? So being able to hold the information or listen to it at a rate that's coming at you in the classroom in order to then get it down on paper. Sometimes in like an environment like a classroom, when you're trying to listen to the teacher and then all the thoughts and get it on the mind map can sometimes be difficult. For Isabella.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take these bullet points that I've done, and this is called a bullet map because I take the bullet points and then organize them into a map, and I'm going to answer it from these questions. So key words, this is full of keywords. Let's find high ranking keywords in here. Coloring a map, important. Color, I'd say, is the important word and most important word. There's finding keywords. Keywords is really important. The element here I'm interested in is finding, then eliminating, Finished, revisit, re-editing. Revisiting maps and re-editing, they're two important ones. Organize maps and subjects, organize them. Spelling symbols instead symbols. Clockwise start, how do you start a map? And then we'll talk about clockwise. Long spend on a map, how long on a map? Auditory, listening and mapping. Listen and map. Mapping would be first, listening would be second. Let's give that 2 lines, mapping 1 line. So let's say map and then color. Class, listen, organize. Yeah, listening in a class. Okay, so let's organize that into a bit of a mind map and then I will talk about it. I'm just gonna fast forward this a little bit so you don't have to see it all. Now that I've got all these questions organized in a map, I'm just going to spend some time answering them for you. There's a lot I could say about each of them. I'm going to try and be as succinct as possible to get to the heart of your question. So number 1, color. Is it important? So what's behind this question, I think you're asking, should I be coloring in all the time? And why is it there? When do I need it? And the answer to that question is you don't need to colour in your mind map all the time. But colour is really helpful and useful, especially when it comes to trying to remember your map and when you start getting bigger maps with more information in them and use the colour to chunk the information and organise it better. I've got a whole lesson on that, just that, because it's so useful. How much time do you spend mapping? Once you become a proficient mapper, these are the kind of timings you're thinking about. A note map. You can note map virtually at the same speed as someone's talking. So that's the kind of pattern. It's actually much faster than taking regular notes. So if you're a slower note taker, doing a mind map makes you a faster note taker than even regular note takers. That's the reason why I'm encouraging you as creative children and dyslexics to really take this skill on. Let's move on to the next thing, which is organizing your maps. That's a big question, actually, when you come down to it. You know, there's different things you need to think about when you're organizing your maps. Well, the simple answer is I put them all into one folder with dividers. Writing and symbols. Some children find it really hard to write. They're so dyslexic that they can't hardly write. And you can do a mind map just with symbols. The important thing about a map is that it's got to be a map of your thoughts, and for you to be able to point to the map and remember what it's about and explain it with your own words. It doesn't matter what's written there. What matters is, can it help you structure your scatty brain so you can explain yourself to someone else, okay? Let's talk about starting. Where do you start in the mind map? Well, you start in the center of the page and then you do your first branch at 1 o'clock. Simple as that. I do it the same way every time, so I always know the structure of my map. Then when it comes to clockwise, you asked me about clockwise. I go in clockwise all the way around, and I also go in clockwise on the branch, and even when it's at the bottom, I keep going clockwise. And this is quite important for me. Being systematic means it has payoffs in the future. So these little things have payoffs in the future when it comes to doing systematic exams, or you've got a business plan, or you've got an idea to explain. It's structured in your mind. Then the biggie is listening and mind mapping. The answer to that question is, there are many people who can mind map, but they can't mind map someone talking. And it's a little bit of a threshold experience, you know. There's 3 main stages of mind mapping. There's mind mapping your own thoughts. Then the next stage is mind mapping someone's writing. Then the 3rd stage is mind mapping someone talking. That's harder because you might miss it, or things are going fast and so on, and sometimes as a creative or dyslexic we need time to process things. But with a mind map, if you push through and find techniques to be able to mind map when you're listening, then it can be really transformative in the amount of time it saves you. It's one thing mind mapping your own thoughts, okay? It's another thing mind mapping someone else's thoughts, whether they're written down or you're listening to them, okay? I've got a little video from one of my courses, the intermediate course. I want to show it to you, and what I do is I use this, I take a little bit of text and I say this is what's happening in my brain and how I'm taking away words and trying to filter down the key words. It's a 4-minute video and we call it Sorry Michelangelo. This is our paragraph, which is from this mind mapping book. We've got 52 words in this paragraph. We divide it into 3 sentences. Let's take the first sentence, visual note-taking is nothing new, and break it down into words. We have a 6-word sentence. Imagine you could only keep 3 words. Visual note-taking is nothing new. Well, needs to go. Note-taking. Note is enough. I don't need the taking. What I would do there is I would say visual note new. It's a question. Is visual note-taking new? Our next sentence is a lot longer. We've got 28 words here. The goal here is to unpack it down to 14 words. So we've got you can see it in primitive cave paintings. I don't really need the you. I might keep see it in, get rid of those. Well, I don't need the. I don't need the of. I could probably manage with just Egypt. I don't need ancient. I don't need and the. Get rid of and the of. Get rid of the and there and as. I don't need the such. I don't actually need sketches because notes of great thinkers like Leonardo, we've seen his notes, we know what they're talking about, so that'll do. What if you could only keep 3 of those words? I don't really need see. Primitive cave paintings. Well, primitive I don't need. Cave probably reminds me cave paintings. I know what she's talking about. Hieroglyphs Egypt. Well, I don't need Egypt because hieroglyphs we know is all about Egypt. I don't need Da Vinci. Leonardo's enough. Great thinkers. I don't really need great thinkers because we know Leonardo and Michelangelo are great thinkers. Now, notes. We're already talking about notes. So we don't really need notes anymore. Leonardo and Michelangelo are kind of very similar stage. So I prefer to keep Leonardo because of his notebooks. So we'll put Michelangelo on the pile. Sorry, Michelangelo. So that leaves my 3 keywords as cave, hieroglyphs, Leonardo. That was our first sentence. This is our second sentence. Our next sentence, left to their own devices, most children, many adults, sketch and doodle while listening to new ideas. These 16 words, the challenge is what 8 words would you keep? Well, we know we don't want the 2 there. Well, left on their own, most children, we don't need the most. Let's get rid of and many. We don't need the and. We can make the doodle stand for sketch and doodle. We can get rid of the while too. The challenge now is what would happen if we could only keep 3 words from this. There's no rules about what's the right one and what's the wrong one. The goal here is what words help you remember the original meaning of that sentence. Let's see. I think I don't need left and own. I'll just take adults out of this. I would probably take listening you away. Children doodle ideas. For me, that summarizes that sentence. You might have different ones. That's allowed. Let's go through and see if it still holds the value. Visual notes, new. Cave, hieroglyphs, Leonardo. Children doodle ideas. I'm going to see, what if you could only keep 1 word from each? Which would be that word? Just as a challenge. I would probably say new. I would probably keep cave. And I'd probably doodle. Now why? Is visual note-taking new? No, it's not. Started at the caves and we still doodle. That's why. Let's turn this into a mind map. We've got our keywords. So we started with visual, note, new. The center of the mind map, I would say it's about note taking. And then visual. And then the question is it new? And the answer is, we've got the example of cave paintings, hieroglyphics, Leonardo. I'm going to get rid of children and ideas because doodle, we said children and adults. So that's everyone. That's how it would turn into a mind map. Note taking, visual, is it new? No, it's not. Cave painting, hieroglyphics, Leonardo. And this is probably what it would look like if it was a regular mind map. Now that was a very shortened version of a longer video that takes 12 minutes that really breaks it down. Now obviously that's just what's going on inside of my brain to break down the keywords. And there's a lot more to it than that, to break down other people's keywords, but that gives you a little bit of a taste of what you're trying to do with a mind map to strip things down. You know how I did it in 3 cuts? The first time I halved it. That's kind of like a messy note map. Like see my journal here. Like that's a messy note map. Okay? I'm just scribbling down lots of words. And then I neaten it up. Okay? And then I tighten it further and further until I've got something that I can really work with if I need to do it for a presentation or an essay or an exam. The big question now is, hands up, who's interested in learning how to mind map? Okay, couple of people. This is my question to you. It's a good idea, but when are you going to learn? Are you going to learn after the next 2 years? You know, a year goes by and you think, yeah, that's a really good idea. I'll get round to doing that sometime. And then a month goes by, 3 months go by, a year goes by. You do some exams, you try it out, you get busy. And then you think, you know, that mind mapping, it's quite a good idea. You have a wee play with it and you get some functionality out of it for the next year. And this is how I learned how to do it, and most people learn how to do it. And it takes 2-3 years to start to develop your own study strategy from it. I'd like you to learn how to do that in 4 weeks instead of it taking 2 years. Here's how it normally goes. The first phase, there's 3 phases of learning how to mind map. First phase is you mind map your ideas. You brainstorm your thoughts down, okay? You learn how to mind map and organize your thoughts. That's actually really easy. You can learn that in about an hour and a half, okay? If you went to a workshop, it would probably take you about 6 hours. But I've compressed that into 1.5 hours worth of videos. Easy peasy, no problem. The second stage is, how do you mind map your notes? How do you mind map a teacher talking? How do you mind map a video? How do you mind map web research? How do you mind map an essay outline so that you can turn it straight into an essay afterwards without having to re-edit it and reorganize it? That will take you about 4 hours to learn. Third stage is, some people get to the stage where they can mind map. They take their different mind maps and they pull them all together. Let's say there's 8 different mind maps. Pull them all together into one mind map that summarizes it. And then they take that one mind map with another 8 that's summarized into one, and then they pull that all into one mind map. And then they walk into the exam with that mind map drawn out. And I talk about something called flash mapping. Here's a really good technique for exams. When, instead of flashcards, get everything into one paper like this, flip it over, redraw it quickly, and then flip it back and test which ones you're remembering. And what you don't remember, you practice and you draw pictures of, and then it gets better, and you keep marking yourself until you can memorize that one mind map. And if you can memorize it for 15 minutes, if you can keep it in your brain for 15 minutes, this is what I do. Before the exam, I write it out, and I'm 10 minutes to go till the exam. I test myself, and then I don't speak to anyone. I walk into the exam, I sit down, and I've still got the mind map in my memory. And then the examiner says, you may begin. And before I even open up the question paper, I take out a sheet of paper, and do you know what I do? I draw out my mind map. And I've got all the answers in the exam with me. And it's allowed. And it's allowed. It's legit. And teachers will tell you, good teachers will tell you, when you get into that exam, the first thing to do is to write down a list of all the key facts and ideas before you even open up the question paper. Whether it's a mind map or a bullet list, that's the best thing that you can go away with from this talk. Write down all the key facts and ideas. Just spend 1 minute, 2 minutes writing them all down, because you will forget one or two of them. And if you write them down when your brain's fresh, you've got them and you won't lose them. Now, if you could write down a whole mind map, because it's all connected with images and so on, wow. That's what I teach in the exam course. So, here's what I'd like you guys to do, is I'd like you to consider doing this course, 4-week course, 4 hours, 1 hour a week. You watch a video, and then we all get together and do something like this, talk and share ideas, tell our stories about how I did this test, or I mind map my Macbeth, or I mind map my history. Like yesterday, we had a girl doing hires. She's 17 years old. She just flicked through her pages and she said, here's all my notes. She'd done about 40 mind maps in 1 week. And each mind map had summarized about 3 or 4 pages. That just cuts your workload massively. Now, some other people were 12-year-olds, 11-year-olds, and they're like, oh, I mind mapped this project and that was enough, but they're learning at that stage. So, it's kind of like tutoring, you know? Like, I'd like to be kind of your tutor and tutor you for, it's kind of like for 1 hour a week, you go away and learn, and then 1 hour we get together, 40 minutes, and do this for 4 weeks. And at the end of it, you'll be able to mind map your homework, you'll be able to mind map your teacher talking, and you'll be able to mind map an essay. You'll basically be able to do that with your thoughts. You don't have to do this, but I highly recommend it because it's quick and fun and it gets it done. Oh, and by the way, in the beginner's course, you learn how to do this. I'll send you an email with how to do this, okay? After this, in about a day's time. Tomorrow I'll send you an email. Guys, the bottom line is this. I want you to be able to explain what's in your brain. And I want you to take it really seriously. Because it makes the difference between this. You might be really good with a car engine, okay? And you could, if you could explain your thoughts, you might become a person who designs car engines. But if you can't explain your thoughts, you'll end up becoming a mechanic. You could be a person who really understands architecture and so on, and you really want, you've got great ideas, but if you can't explain your thoughts, instead of an architect, you'll become a carpenter. Now, there's nothing wrong with being a carpenter. I'm a carpenter. But if you're a carpenter that has these ideas and you can't share them properly, then there's a huge level of frustration. If you're a video editor that could be a movie producer, if only you could explain the story concepts in your brain. Mind mapping is a simple tool, but it's also a skill that can help you explain yourself to someone else. Whether it's via video, YouTube, a story, a poem, lyrics, a business plan, whatever it is, a mind map can do all of those things. But you need to organize your thoughts so you can share them. So on that, I will love you and leave you. And thank you for giving me your time. Was that worth an hour and a half?
Yes, it's great, thank you.
But I hope it's been enjoyable, and Hope to see you soon. I'll talk to you guys later, okay?